viewers. Today I will be dealing with the fundamentals of traditional knowledge in biodiversity conservation. In lecture 1, I will be dealing with the meaning and the definition of traditional knowledge, the sources of traditional knowledge, their importance, and how India have made an attempt to protect the traditional knowledge. You must be knowing that traditional knowledge refers to the knowledge, innovations and practices of indigenous and local communities. These local communities, they live with the nature, they interact with the nature, primarily the animals and the plants and the other microorganisms that exist on the earth, and they utilize the resources of them for the benefit of the larger sections of people. Thus, due to their continuous interaction with the nature, they have developed great deal of knowledge within them, and hence it is being utilized for the other generations for the utilization of such resources in the sustainable manner. Thus, we can say that this process, that is the interactions of the indigenous communities with the nature, is known as the traditional knowledge, because the communities, they hold such knowledge which is passed upon orally from generation to generation, and it is being collectively used by the other communities for the research, for the knowledge and for varied purposes. Traditional knowledge is same as indigenous knowledge or local knowledge, because it is referred to the knowledge which is embedded in the cultural traditions in the local, regional and the indigenous communities. So, it is widely noted, or it is widely said, that there is a formal set of knowledge which exists, and there is a traditional knowledge which exists. The formal knowledge is such type of knowledge which exists in a formal setup. That is to say that in schools, colleges, universities, where formal knowledge is imparted from the elder generation to the young generations, or the vice versa. Whereas, in traditional knowledge, the knowledge is being transferred from the very elderly persons to the young generations. So, it is continuous, it is not absolute. Thus, we can say traditional knowledge is dynamic in nature, because it is continuously evolving. Whatever is formal knowledge, and apart from what is left out of formal knowledge, if we try to put everything in the traditional knowledge, then there will be oversimplification and generalization of traditional knowledge. Thus, to avoid this, we have to first see the importance of traditional knowledge, or else we won't be able to do justice with the traditional knowledge. Before we analyze the characteristics of traditional knowledge, let me first tell you, is there any difference between the indigenous communities and local communities? Is there any demarcation between the two? To to understand this concept, a community is indigenous in its aspect if they belong to a particular locality. That is to say that their ancestors, they are living in the particular locality since time immemorial. They live with the nature, they are familiar with the topography, they are familiar with the geographical conditions, they are familiar with the climatic conditions, they are familiar with the practices that is going on, the interaction between the plants and animals, and thus these communities, they are termed as the indigenous communities. Whereas the local communities means that these communities, they have developed interaction with the environment, with the surroundings over a long period of time. That is to say that they have a long association with the environment. It could be 10 years, it could be 15 years, and thus they have developed some considerations with the environment and the other aspects. Such communities are known as the local communities. Both this indigenous community and the local communities, they are the custodians of the traditional knowledge. So, if we interact with these communities, we will find that these communities, they generally possess two types of views. One is the holistic view and second is the spiritual view. Holistic view proponents, they are of the belief that everything is connected to the nature. Plants, animals, species, every minute particle, they are connected with the nature and they continuously interact among each other in an ecosystem. Man is just a part of interconnections in such scenario. Whereas in the spiritual view proponents believes that everything is controlled by God. That is to say that if any misconduct, any misharm is being done to these species, to these animals, then in that case the God will punish us either in the form of calamity or disaster or any other aspects. Thus, indigenous community and the local community, they both are of the view that nothing has to be harmed, or no species, no plants, no animals, they should be utilized beyond their permissible limit. Coming up to the second characteristic features of traditional knowledge, that is the oral transmission. Now, the oral transmission of traditional knowledge from generation to generation plays a very important role. These traditional people, they are not generally, we have two types of views that is amongst us. One is the holistic view and second is the spiritual view. The holistic view proponents states that everything that exists on the earth, they are interconnected. That is to say that the plants, the animals, the species, the various other particles, they are interconnected in an ecosystem, and man is just a part of such interconnections. Whereas the spiritual view proponents, they are of the view that everything is controlled by God. So, if any misharm or any misconduct is done to the biodiversity, to the forest, to the creatures, then the God will punish ourselves either in the form of natural calamity or any disease or any disaster that will be bestowed upon us. Coming up to the second characteristic features of traditional knowledge, that is the oral transmission of traditional knowledge from one generation to the other generation. These traditional knowledge or these tribals, they are not easily approachable. If any person they tries to visit them in the forest, then they will not easily come out or they will not easily speak out their practices to such persons in order to fear themselves from such utilization of resources or such utilization of knowledge that they possess. So, in order to gain the confidence of these tribal people, one has to be very cautious in order to utilize their resources in a sustainable manner. The tribal peoples, these communities, they have a great deal of knowledge. They are rich in this particular aspects. And such knowledge, in order to extract such knowledge from them, they have to, or any person have to make specific arrangements to reach out to them, to speak out to them, to interact them confidently and make them believe that their resources will not be commercialized in any way. The third characteristic features of traditional knowledge is the location and the cultural specific aspect. Now, these indigenous communities, they are being found at a particular location. They are cultural specific in nature. That is to say that they belong to one geographical point in which they live, they interact, they utilize their resources, and they are easily accessible. So, the origin of traditional knowledge differs from place to place. Some traditional communities, they are found in the interior of the forest. Some traditional communities, they have specific area of their survival, and thus they are being separated across the nation. The third concerns of, or the third aspect of the traditional knowledge is that traditional knowledge is continuously evolving. They are not static. This means that the interaction of the people with these communities has been changing from time to time, because due to the climatic conditions, due to the other social and economic factors, everything is changing in due course of time. So, the knowledge of these communities, they are dynamic in nature. The fourth unique characteristics of traditional knowledge is they are vital for the social and the economic aspects. Traditional knowledge is generally a cultural based knowledge. That is to say that people of one community depends upon the knowledge to a larger extent, and thus this knowledge is being passed from generation to generation to the other communities. The socio-economic cultural aspects of the traditional knowledge depends upon the varied factors which is different from the region to region. The last aspect of the characteristic feature of traditional knowledge is the innovator or the creator of such knowledge is unidentifiable. That is to say that this particular traditional knowledge, in most of the cases, they are being not known to the various communities. Moving ahead, why should we protect the traditional knowledge? Now, this is the exact area where we should think upon that is there any need to protect traditional knowledge, or what are the benefits of protecting the traditional knowledge? Because having said traditional knowledge is and their importance, traditional knowledge is one of the knowledge that existed since time immemorial, then is there any need to protect them? The need to protect the traditional knowledge have been changing from time to time, and in order to stop the misappropriation of such knowledge, or in order to stop the commercialization of such knowledge, there is a great concern of protecting such knowledge in its varied aspects, because these traditional knowledge creates value for human mankind. This traditional knowledge, it enables the communities to participate in the global markets or to participate in every other aspects with the whole world. This traditional knowledge, it increases the opportunities of the people living in those areas, and their socio-economic development also get strengthened in relation to if they get protected or if they get protection from the government or the other agencies. Thus, it is important to note that the traditional knowledge or the holders of this traditional knowledge, they have huge amount of opportunities to share their knowledge with the other world if they are also being given due recognition or they are duly acknowledged of their practices, of their knowledge, of their resources in the outer world. For example, the tribal and the local communities, they use various plant parts. For example, the tubers, the stems, the leaves, the flowers, the fruits and the seeds. These plants or these the part of these plants, they are considered as a healthy, they are healthy, they are nutritious, they have their vitality and the longevity, they are enjoyed by the tribals, and they have been attributed to these conditions or to these wild edibles since a longer period of time. So all these information is being possessed by these communities in the form of traditional knowledge, and hence it has become very important intellectual property aspects of protecting the rights of the traditional people who are living in such arena. Thank you.